What's poppin', gamers? There's many reasons why I never really liked Windranger. First of all, there was this weird contempt and fear whenever she was picked on my own team, which I couldn't really describe or explain or rationalize until I saw Sir ActionSax's video about her. She just simply sucks, and only seems good because of her few times she hits her skill shots. But there are other reasons too why I didn't like her. Her anatomy is freaking weird, and the way she holds her bow just pisses me off. Just look at this tracing of her body. Now, I'm typically not one to body shame anyone, but in her case, it's just her skeleton and posture making zero sense. She also has barely any lore at all in her basic bio, and her voice lines don't reveal much either other than a rivalry with Drow Ranger. But now, with the Arcana, she looks like the perfect female Sims 4 character, and she's all of a sudden just my type. My goddess and queen, the fount I worship with all my simpage, Belle Delphine, put it perfectly why the Windrunner Arcana is so nice looking.
Little titties, big ass, and no dad.
She fit this criteria before too, but that doesn't really work if it's on the body of a shaved baboon. And yes, she does have no dad, which we'll get into without any further ado. I'll first go over her basic lore, then we will talk about her Arcana, and then her relationships. So usually I would summarize the lore bio in my own words, but from now on, I'm just going to read it out as they are, so nothing gets lost in translation. The western forests guard their secrets well. One of these is Lyralei, master archer of the wood and favored godchild of the wind. Known now as Windranger, Lyralei's family was killed in a storm on the night of her birth, their house blown down by the gale, contents scattered to the winds. Only the newborn survived among the debris field of death and destruction. In the quiet after the storm, the wind itself took notice of the lucky infant crying in the grass. The wind pitied the child and so lifted her into the sky and deposited her on the doorstep of a neighboring village. In the years that followed, the wind returned occasionally to the child's life, watching from a distance while she honed her skills. Now, after many years of training, Windranger fires her arrows true to their targets. She moves with blinding speed, as if hastened by a wind ever at her back. With a flurry of arrows, she slaughters her enemies, having become nearly a force of nature herself. Then the Arcana reads as follows.
I'll set my arrows aloft.
The mysteries of her birth had always enchanted Lyralei and her adopted family, but as she grew and her strange connection with the guardian wind became ever stronger, an unease about her origins began to take hold. And though she thought to run from it, her headlong path led only to the discovery of a difficult truth, that her village and bloodkin had been destroyed by wind elementals on a night of righteous reckoning, and that such destruction was necessary to reclaim her as one of their own. And then, let's hear Windrunner's own account of the story from her new voice lines.
I never met my family, but I never imagined them to be bad people. I certainly never imagined that their deaths were both intentional and deserved. And they didn't die alone. An entire village was obliterated on the night of my birth. I never questioned it growing up. Why would I? Zarokina didn't ever occupy my thoughts. It was just a void in my life. But now I sometimes think of little else. Because now I know that I wasn't just born on the night of a storm. No, the gale descended upon Zarokina that night because I was born. Because I was the last chance for Mother Wind to right a great wrong. My family, my real family, was special, but they weren't alone in their gifts. Other distant clans had also learned to forge ethereal connections with forces mortals could scarce comprehend. And not just with our precious wind, other elements had their adherents as well. It was from an elder who sits amongst the servants of the dancing flame that I heard the truth of my people. One who knew friendship with my ancestors. One who mourned their passing and celebrated my return. My grandmother was different than her sisters. She was ungifted in the ways of the Gale. In those days, even though they lived apart, the Order of the Rising Gale played an important role in Zarokinan affairs. Together with the worshippers of the Ongvol, theirs was the counsel the village elders would seek in guiding the people. Unlike those who prayed to the Ongvol, the Rising Gale was not an open congregation. You were either born into it, or you weren't. But it was very rare for one of my family line to be born without the blessings of Mother Wind. So it was only natural that my grandmother would make a normal life for herself in Zarokina. that she would find comfort and love there amongst the normal people. But just as love can be a source of immense good, it can also be a conduit for great evil. My paternal great-grandfather was high priest in Zarukina. He despised the windwalkers of the Gale, resented their influence. So when his son fell in love with a member of the Gale's oldest family, he saw an opportunity. He did not rush. He sanctioned their union, welcomed my grandmother into the village with open arms. He spent time with members of the Order, learned as much as he could about their ways. Then slowly, but surely, he began to sow the seeds of fear and doubt about the true motives of those embraced by the Gale. In the minds of my grandmother and a growing number of villagers, so slowly that the changes were almost imperceptible until it was entirely too late. I don't know precisely what the last days of my people were like. The flame tender could not say, but I know now. I could feel it. The night of my birth was a night of judgment, when a guilty sentence condemned all of Zarukina for the crimes they'd allowed to transpire. I don't know what comes next. I don't need to. I've taken what I need from the ruins of my past. Now I go where the wind takes me.
Okay, now let's summarize. So Windrunner's story is basically that her ancestors from Sarkina were all special wind people who were part of the Order of the Rising Gale. Windranger's real bloodline were all born with similar wind powers to her, except some very rare occasions when one would be born a normal human being with no special wind talents. The talent, or power, or even personification of the mother wind, if you will, that they derive their powers from, is called the gale. Similar families also had such powers in their bloodline from different places, including different elements like fire, earth, and water. For example, the ones with the fire talents are called the servants of the dancing flame. Normal people could instead join the Angval, which was open to anyone. Together, the elders of the Rising Gale and the Angvals guided the people of Sarkina. But like I said, not everyone in Windranger's family were born naturally gifted. Her grandmother was born basically a muggle, a normal person. She was not like her sisters and thus lived a normal life. And that's when one of the elders of the Angval, who was normal, saw an opportunity. Despite how much he despised the Order of the Rising Gale and the Wind Power people, he allowed her into the village and treated her kindly, while secretly scheming the end of the worshippers of the Gale. You see, while anyone can join the Angval, you can only join the Order of the Rising Gale through birth and having the right genotype with wind magic. And that's probably what made him so angry and bitter. Humans often despise those who say you can't join, even if you wouldn't necessarily want to join in the first place. Who wouldn't be a bit jealous of the elitist people born naturally gifted with powers you could never obtain? So, he welcomed Windrunner's grandmother in, and he also pretended to approve of his son's marriage with a member of the Gale, all so he could learn their ways. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, so on and so forth. And then, slowly and surely, he started his attack. It was incredibly subtle, but very effective. He started slandering, gossiping, and in general swaying the views of the normal people of Sarkina to make them grow suspicion and contempt for the Order of the Rising Gale. And he was successful. Windrunner doesn't know what happened next, but it's implied that her family and everyone else in the Order of the Rising Gale were purged by the normal people. And that's why on the night of Windranger's birth, the last of her kind, the Gale avenged the fallen worshippers by killing and destroying everyone and everything in Sarkina, except for our heroine. The wind took her to a neighboring village where she grew up pretty normally with an adoptive family. The wind would occasionally visit her, watching over its talented godchild. And my guess is, Windranger's Sailor Moon transformation into her Arcana happened when she talked to one of the elders of the Dancing Flame and got explained what happened to her family. How it wasn't an ordinary storm, but instead punishment for wiping out her culture and chosen people of the Gale. And her new look is when she becomes the new and only member of the Rising Gale. Okay, so that's the entirety of her background, but we still have some relationships to discuss. Grimstroke might also know about what happened to her people.
Trust me, Lyralei. You're better off not knowing your people.
Her most notable relationships are about archery and marksmanships with Drow Ranger, Marana, Sniper, and Clinks.
My arrow found your arrow's mark.
That's some fancy ice bow you have there, Drow. In your dead hand.
A mounted bow will always claim victory.
You were a better rider than archer, but even in that, the cat carried the load.
Guns are the future, my friend.
Your tiny featherless arrows can't hurt me, sniper.
You may outrun me, but you'll never outshoot me.
Sorry, Clinks. I can offer archery lessons if you'd like.
Meepo likes her a lot.
Windrunner, how you doing?
Windrunner seems to like Enchantress.
Enchantress, you're too cute to kill. Just stay back and hide next time.
She also seems to have a special relationship with Antimage, probably because of their infamous comic together.
You should have looked inward for your answers, Anti-Mage. Your unnatural quest could only end like this.
She seems on good terms with the typical good male heroes like Sven, Kunkka Lycan, Beastmaster, and Dragonite.
You had a kind soul, Davion. I take no pleasure in this.
She seems to have some beef with Omniknight.
You praise the omniscience for your victories. Does it share blame in your defeat?
Some new voice lines are centered around the Siltbreaker campaign. For those who don't remember, you played a hero from a set little pool and went through the desert first in Act 1, and then in the freezing tundra in Act 2, eventually ending up in Darkreef Prison, which is underwater. Darkreef is where Sark used to be imprisoned before he escaped. It's also where Act 2 ends when you defeat Siltbreaker himself. Here's all her voice lines related to it.
I thought we'd turned a corner after Darkreef. I guess you couldn't let old grudges go. We did the impossible once, but our truce was always uneasy. Hey, Traxax, whatever happened to that big scorpion eye we found in Calibor? You know how long it took me to be comfortable around spiders again after Silkmire? Yeesh. Did you really fight at Stonefish Gate, Naga? My respects to your fallen comrades. May they rest easier now with Siltbreaker's demise. Don't worry, Naga. I saw Siltbreaker's death with my own eyes, and my own arrows in his scaly hide. Hey, Sven, is it true the Conclave offered you a place at the table after we finished in Darkreef? Why'd you refuse? I'm not gonna lie, Sven, I had nightmares for a little while after Darkreef. Talking about it helped a lot, so I'm here, you know, if you wanna. Any word on how the folks in Azura are doing these days, Tusk? I know we didn't talk much during that whole Conclave of the Brine thing. What was your marker for?
And that's it for this video. Sorry, I was going to first do Pudge, but there's just so much that it will take a while. Hope to see you around, and peace.